It happened at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday, I know, because I watched the clock on his laptop screen as he clicked delete, erasing the acceptance email from Northwestern that I'd been checking for every single day for 3 months. My hands had gone numb, my vision tunneled, and something inside me that had been bending for 3 years finally snapped clean in half. "You don't need college, Avery," he'd said, his voice that particular kind of calm that always preceded the worst fights. "You have everything you need right here, with me. Why would you want to leave?" He wasn't asking, he never asked. He was telling me who I was allowed to be, what I was allowed to want, how small I needed to make myself to fit inside the cage he'd built around my life. So I waited. I smiled. I nodded. I said all the right things until he opened his third beer, then his fourth, until his words slurred and his eyes grew heavy. I waited until his breathing deepened into the rhythmic snore that meant he wouldn't wake for hours. And then I moved. My mother's necklace first, the only thing of value I owned, hidden in a tampon box because Marcus would never look there. My phone, even though I knew he'd been tracking it for months. $43 from the emergency cash I'd been skimming from grocery money, $5 at a time, for the past year. I didn't pack clothes. Didn't grab my laptop or the photos or any of the things that used to matter. I just pulled on his oversized Northwestern hoodie, the irony wasn't lost on me, and walked out the door of our third-floor apartment like I was stepping off a cliff. The November air hit me like a slap. Chicago cold, the kind that finds every gap in your clothing and reminds you that you're fragile, breakable, alone. I had no coat, no plan, no destination, just the desperate, overwhelming need to breathe. I walked for what felt like hours, my phone dying slowly in my pocket, Marcus's texts escalating from confusion to anger to threats. "Where are you?" "Then, this isn't funny, Avery." "Then you're making a huge mistake." And finally, "You're dead when I find you. You know I always find you." My fingers were going numb when I realized I was completely lost. I'd wandered into a neighborhood I didn't recognize, upscale, quiet. The kind of place where Marcus and I never went because he said people there thought they were better than us. Brownstones with warm light glowing behind expensive curtains. Cars that cost more than we made in a year. And then, like something out of a dream, I saw it. The sign read Sanctuary in elegant script, backlit and glowing against the dark street. Through the frosted windows I could see leather booths, amber lighting. People who looked like they belonged to a different world entirely. The kind of place I had no business entering, especially looking like this. Running shoes soaked through. Leggings, an ex-boyfriend's hoodie, and 3 years of trauma written across my face. But my phone was at 2%. My hands had gone from numb to painful. And I had nowhere else to go. I pushed open the heavy wooden door, and warmth rushed out to meet me along with the scent of expensive liquor and something cooking that made my empty stomach clench. The conversation didn't stop, not exactly, but I felt every pair of eyes in the place track my entrance. A bartender in a crisp white shirt looked up, his expression shifting from professional welcome to something like concern. A woman in a red dress paused mid-laugh, and in the corner booth, a man in a charcoal suit set down his whiskey glass and went completely still. Even from across the room, I felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on a Roman coin, all angles and authority, and a kind of controlled power that made my breath catch. He wasn't looking at me the way Marcus looked at me, like I was something to own. He was looking at me like I was a puzzle he'd just decided to solve. I should have turned around. Should have walked back out into the cold and found a gas station, a women's shelter. Literally anywhere else. Instead, my feet carried me forward, weaving between tables, past curious stares, straight toward the man whose eyes never left mine. I stopped at his booth, swaying slightly, my vision starting to blur at the edges. "I'm sorry," I heard myself say, my voice cracking. I don't know what I need. I'm sorry." He stood in one fluid motion, taller than I'd realized, and his hand caught my elbow as my knees started to buckle. His touch was warm, steady, completely impersonal, but the way he looked at me was anything but. "Sit," he said, his voice quiet but carrying absolute authority. Not a request. A command that somehow didn't feel like one. Before you fall down. He guided me into the booth across from him, and I collapsed onto leather that was softer than any furniture I'd ever owned. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Marcus again. Always Marcus, and I pulled it out with shaking hands, staring at the message that made my blood run cold. I know you're out there somewhere. You think you can just leave? After everything I've done for you? I'll find you, Avery. You know I always do. I looked up to find the stranger's dark eyes on my phone screen, reading the message, even though I hadn't shown it to him. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and something dangerous flickered across his features before he carefully controlled it. Who is he? The stranger asked, his voice still quiet but now edged with something that made the air between us feel electric. No one, I whispered automatically, the lie Marcus had trained into me. It's nothing. I'm fine. The stranger leaned forward slightly, and I caught the scent of his cologne cedar and something darker, more expensive than anything in Marcus's world. Let me be very clear about something, he said, his dark eyes holding mine with an intensity that made it impossible to look away. You just walked into my establishment, terrified and alone, running from someone who thinks he owns you. That makes it my business. He paused, something almost gentle crossing his features. And in my experience, women who are fine don't run through Chicago in November wearing someone else's clothes. His words cracked something open inside me. And before I could stop them, tears were sliding down my face. The stranger made a small gesture, and suddenly the bartender was there with a blanket that he draped around my shoulders with surprising gentleness. I'm Luca, the stranger said, settling back into his seat like he had all the time in the world. Luca Moretti. And this, he gestured around us, is my place. Which means you're safe here. Understand? I nodded, not understanding at all, but desperately wanting to believe him. Good, Luca said, and then he smiled, a small, dangerous thing that made my heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Now, let's talk about the man who thinks he can threaten what's under my protection. Luca didn't ask questions. He simply raised one hand, and the bartender appeared with amber liquid in a crystal tumbler. Whiskey, Luca said. It'll warm you faster than anything else. I took the glass with trembling hands and drank. The burn spread through my chest, pushing back the cold that had nothing to do with November. Thank you. I can't pay. I only have $43. It's on the house. He waved dismissively, studying me with dark, calculating eyes. How long have you been walking? 3, maybe 4 hours. Time had stopped meaning anything after I'd fled Marcus's apartment. I just kept moving. If I stopped, my phone lit up. Once. Twice. 3 times in rapid succession. I'm coming to find you. You can't hide from me, Avery. I will find you. Luca's hand moved across the table slowly, deliberately, and turned my phone so he could read the screen. I watched his expression shift. The polite bar owner vanished, replaced by something cold and dangerous. His jaw clenched. His eyes went hard as stone. Show me your wrists, he said quietly. I tried to hide them, but he was already reaching across the table. His touch surprisingly gentle as he exposed the finger-shaped bruises Marcus had left 2 days ago. Yellow-green now, but still visible. Still evidence. How long? Lucas's voice was barely a whisper. 3 years. The truth spilled out. At first, he was perfect. After my mum died, he was everything I needed. But then it was little things, comments about my friends, my clothes, then tracking my phone, reading my emails, controlling where I went, who I saw. My voice cracked. I don't know how I became this person. You didn't become anything, Luca said firmly. He tried to break you. There's a difference. He stood and walked to the bar, speaking quietly to an elegant older woman who appeared with a first aid kit. She slid into the booth beside me, her smile warm and knowing. I'm Anna, she said, opening the kit. Let's take care of those bruises, honey. While Anna worked, applying cream with gentle hands, Luca made 3 phone calls. I caught fragments. Background check, Marcus Chun, by morning. Each call was brief, efficient, and left me with more questions than answers. Anna finished wrapping my wrists. "You're safe here, Kara," she murmured. "Whatever you're running from can't touch you in Sanctuary. Luca doesn't allow it." Before I could ask what she meant, the door burst open. "There you are." Marcus stood in the doorway, his face red with rage and alcohol, his eyes locked on me. On us. "Get away from her," he snarled, storming toward our booth. "Avery, get up! We're leaving. Now!" I froze, 3 years of conditioning taking over. But Luca stood, blocking Marcus's path with his body. "She's not going anywhere," Luca said, his voice quiet but deadly. Marcus laughed nervously. "Who the hell are you? You think you can just... I think you need to leave my establishment." Luca interrupted, his tone dropping to something arctic. "Before you do something you'll regret? Or what?" Marcus puffed up his chest. "I'll tell the cops you're keeping my girlfriend here against her will. That she's unstable." 2 men in dark suits materialized from the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, silent. They flanked Luca, not touching Marcus but making their presence abundantly clear. Marcus's bravado cracked. "Avery, tell them! Tell them you're coming home with me. I found my voice." "No." "What?" I said no. Stronger now. "I'm not going anywhere with you." "We're done. You don't get to decide that." Marcus tried to push past Luca. "You're mine." Lucas's hand shot out, gripping Marcus's shoulder hard enough to make him gasp. "She's under my protection now," Luca said, each word precise and final. "Which means if you come near her again, if you call her, text her, even think about her, you'll answer to me. And trust me when I say you don't want that." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise, delivered with the calm certainty of someone who'd made good on such promises before. Marcus went pale. "You don't know who you're dealing with," Luca smiled, and it was terrifying. "Actually, I don't think you know who you're dealing with." He gestured once. The suited men escorted Marcus toward the door with practiced efficiency. At the threshold, one leaned close and whispered something that made Marcus's face go ashen. Then they released him onto the street, and he stumbled away without looking back. The bar remained silent as Luca returned, adjusting his cuffs casually. When he sat across from me again, the steel underneath his polished exterior was unmistakable. "He won't come back," Luca said with absolute certainty. "How can you be sure?" I whispered. He reached across the table and took my hand. "'Cause men like Marcus are cowards. They prey on people they think are weak and alone. But you're not alone anymore, Avery." His dark eyes held mine. "The protection I just extended to you. It's not something anyone in this city would challenge." That's when I understood. The expensive bar. The security team. Anna's complete lack of surprise. The way Marcus had paled at whatever was whispered to him. The absolute authority in Luca's voice. Luca Moretti wasn't just a bar owner. He was something far more dangerous. And I'd just placed myself entirely in his hands. After Marcus disappeared into the night, the bar slowly returned to normal conversations, resuming, glasses clinking, as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. But I couldn't stop shaking. 3 years of living under Marcus's control, and it had ended in less than 5 minutes with a few quiet words from a stranger. Luca returned to the booth, his expression softer now but still unreadable. "You need somewhere safe to stay tonight." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "I'll find a motel or with $43. He raised an eyebrow. "In Chicago. In November." His tone wasn't mocking, just practical. "I have an apartment above the bar. It's clean, secure, and empty. You can stay there tonight." Every instinct screamed that I should refuse. I'd just escaped one man's control. Walking into another's home seemed like trading one cage for another. But exhaustion was setting in, and the thought of wandering the streets again made my legs weak. "Why would you help me?" I asked, searching his face for ulterior motives. "You don't even know me." Something flickered in Luca's dark eyes, recognition, perhaps, or understanding. "Let's just say I have a low tolerance for men who hurt women," he said quietly. "And you walked into my bar, which makes you my responsibility. At least for tonight." The way he said my bar, my responsibility, There was ownership in it, but not the suffocating kind Marcus had wielded. This felt different. Protective rather than possessive. "Just for tonight," I agreed, my voice barely audible. Luca stood, gesturing for me to follow. Anna appeared with my phone and the blanket, pressing both into my hands with a warm smile. "Sleep well, Cara. Tomorrow will look different." Luca led me through a discreet door near the back of the bar and up a narrow staircase. The wood was polished to a soft gleam, the walls painted deep burgundy. At the top, he unlocked a heavy door and stepped aside. The apartment took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the street below. Hardwood floors in rich, dark tones. A charcoal sectional that looked sinfully comfortable. Modern kitchen with gleaming appliances. Everything was immaculate, expensive, and completely unlike anywhere I'd ever lived. "Kitchen stocked," Luca said, moving through the space with casual familiarity. "Bathroom through there? Bedroom at the end of the hall." He placed a key on the entryway table. "This is yours while you stay. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me or Anna." I nodded, still taking in the surroundings. This wasn't just a spare apartment. This was a carefully maintained sanctuary, and I had no idea what I'd just agreed to. "There are clothes in the bedroom that should fit," Luca added, watching my reaction. "Toiletries in the bathroom. If you need anything else, there's a phone by the bed. Press 1 and someone will answer." The fact that he'd prepared for my arrival, that clothes in my size were already here, that everything I might need was waiting, should have set off alarm bells. But I was too tired, too overwhelmed to question it. "Thank you," I whispered. "For everything. I don't know how I'll repay. You don't owe me anything." Avery, the way he said my name, like he was testing how it felt on his tongue, sent an unexpected warmth through my chest. "Just rest. We'll figure out the next steps tomorrow." After he left, I locked the door and leaned against it. Finally allowing myself to breathe, I was safe. For the first time in 3 years, I was behind a locked door that Marcus couldn't get through. I explored the apartment slowly. The bedroom was dominated by a king-sized bed with crisp white sheets that looked impossibly soft. In the closet, I found what Luca had mentioned, designer clothes, all in my size, tags still attached. Jeans, sweaters, a silk robe. In the bathroom, expensive toiletries were arranged on the marble counter, still in their packaging. He'd known I would say yes to staying here. The realization should have frightened me. Instead, I felt something else entirely, a strange sense of being seen, anticipated, cared for in a way I hadn't experienced since my mother died. I showered until the water ran cold, washing away Marcus's apartment, his control, his threats. When I emerged, wrapped in the softest robe I'd ever felt, exhaustion hit me like a wave. I crawled between those cloud-like sheets and was asleep within minutes. I woke hours later to voices, low, male, intense, coming from outside the apartment door. My heart hammered as I crept to the door and pressed my ear against it. Luca's voice, unmistakable in its controlled authority, and another man's, deferential and concerned. "Background check confirmed it, boss. Marcus Chun, 2 priors for harassment, both victims dropped charges. Works in sales, drowning in gambling debt. And the situation tonight?" Luca's voice was cold, clinical. "Tony and Vic had a conversation with him. It's made it clear what happens if he comes near her again." He understood the message. "Good. I want 24-hour surveillance on him anyway. The moment he even looks in this direction, I want to know." "Yes, boss." "And the girl, Miss Avery, what's the play there?" There was a long pause. When Luca spoke again, his voice was quieter, almost tender. "She's not a play, Marco. She's under protection. Full protection. Make sure everyone knows." "Understood." "Does she know who you are?" "What we know. And it stays that way until I decide otherwise. She's been through enough without adding that to her plate." My hand flew to my mouth, stifling a gasp. "Boss, full protection, surveillance." The pieces clicked together with devastating clarity. Luca Moretti wasn't just a bar owner with good security. He was something far more powerful, far more dangerous. and I was standing in his apartment, wearing his clothes. Under his protection, which I was beginning to understand came with a price I hadn't yet been asked to pay. The voices faded as the men moved away. I backed away from the door, my mind racing. I should leave, should grab my mother's necklace and those $43 and run as far and fast as I could. But where would I go? Back to Marcus, to the streets. To a women's shelter where Marcus would eventually find me. Or did I stay here in this beautiful cage with a man who'd saved me from one monster, but might be an even more dangerous one himself? I climbed back into bed, pulled the covers up to my chin, and stared at the ceiling as dawn began to lighten the sky. I'd escaped my abusive ex and found shelter with a mafia boss. The question was, which fate was worse? I woke to the smell of coffee and something baking, rich, buttery, impossible to ignore. For a disorienting moment, I forgot where I was. Then it all came rushing back. Marcus, the bar, Luca's dark promise of protection. It's a conversation I'd overheard through the door. Boss, full protection, surveillance. I pulled on the clothes I'd found last night, designer jeans that fit perfectly, a cashmere sweater softer than anything I'd ever owned, and followed the scent to the kitchen. Luca stood at the stove, dressed in dark slacks and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled up to expose forearms corded with lean muscle. He was cooking, moving with the same controlled grace I'd noticed last night. Domestic and dangerous all at once. "Good morning," he said without turning around, somehow aware of my presence. "I hope you slept well." I did. The lie came, icily. "You didn't have to, you're cooking." "My mother insisted all her children learn," he replied, glancing over his shoulder with a small smile. "She said a man who couldn't feed himself was no man at all." He gestured to the small dining table, already set for two. "Sit, coffee's ready." I moved to the table, pouring myself a cup from the French press, more to have something to do with my hands than out of desire for caffeine. "You didn't have to do this. I wanted to." He brought over 2 plates perfectly golden frittatas with fresh herbs, exactly like something from an expensive brunch spot. "Besides, we need to talk." Those 4 words made my stomach clench. Nothing good ever followed "we need to talk." Luca sat across from me, his dark eyes serious. "My people did some research on Marcus last night." "Your people?" I repeated carefully, testing the words. "Like the men who escorted him out?" "Among others." He took a sip of his espresso, studying me over the rim. "Marcus Chun, 32 years old, works in pharmaceutical sales. Has 2 prior complaints from ex-girlfriends, both for harassment, both dropped before charges were filed." He paused, his expression darkening. "He also has significant gambling debts. Over $60,000 to some very unpleasant people." My hands tightened around my coffee cup. I didn't know about the debts. Or the other women, though I should have. There had been signs. His controlling behavior, the way he monitored every penny I spent, his obsessive need to know where I was. I thought I was the problem, that I was the one making him angry, making him, "You weren't the problem, Avery." Luca's voice was gentle but firm. "Men like Marcus don't need a reason. They just need a target." I nodded, blinking back tears. "What about last night? What did your men say to him?" Something cold flickered in Luca's eyes. "They explained that you're under my protection now. That any attempt to contact you, follow you, or harm you would be met with immediate and severe consequences." He leaned forward slightly. Marcus understood the message. "Just like that?" I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. 3 years of controlling every aspect of my life, and he just walks away because you told him to? "Not because I told him to." Luca's smile was sharp, predatory. "Because he knows what happens to people who don't listen to me." Before I could respond, my phone, which I'd plugged in last night, buzzed on the counter. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Luca rose smoothly and retrieved it, his expression darkening as he read the screen. "Marcus filed a missing persons report," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Claims you're mentally unstable, that you might hurt yourself or others. He's painting you as someone who needs to be found and helped. He looked up at me, something dangerous in his eyes. It's a smart move, actually. If the police find you, your word becomes questionable. His narrative becomes truth. Terror flooded through me. He can do that? Just lie to the police, and he already did. Luca set the phone down and pulled out his own, scrolling through contacts with practiced ease. But don't worry. It's handled. Handled how? Instead of answering, he made a call. Detective Morrison? Luca Moretti. Yes, good morning to you too. His tone was friendly, casual, like he was chatting with an old friend. I understand there's a missing persons report filed this morning. Avery Chun. Yes, that's the one. He paused, listening. She's not missing. She left an abusive situation and is currently safe. The report is false, filed by her ex-boyfriend as a form of continued harassment. Another pause. I appreciate your understanding, Detective. Yes, I'll make sure she's available if you need a statement. Thank you. He ended the call and returned to his seat, taking another sip of espresso like he'd just ordered takeout instead of making a police investigation disappear. I stared at him, my mind reeling. The detective just how? Connections, Luca said simply. Detective Morrison owes me several favors. Now he owes me one less. Favors, I repeated slowly. For what? For things he needed handled that couldn't be handled through official channels. Luca's dark eyes met mine, unflinching. This is a good time for honesty, Avery. So let me be clear. I'm not just a bar owner. I have interests throughout Chicago. Business relationships that operate in gray areas. And when I tell someone you're under my protection, it carries weight, real weight. My heart was pounding. What kind of interests? The kind that keep people safe when the law can't or won't. He leaned back slightly. The kind that solve problems ordinary people can't solve on their own. I set down my coffee cup carefully, my hands trembling. Last night, I heard you talking outside the door. One of your men called you boss. Luca's expression didn't change. You were listening. The walls are thin, I said defensively. And I heard enough to know you're not just some businessman with connections. You're something else entirely. I took a breath, forcing myself to ask the question I'd been avoiding. What are you, Luca? Really? Studied me for a long moment, as if deciding how much truth I could handle. Then he stood, moved around the table, and crouched beside my chair so we were eye level. I'm someone who protects his territory and his people, he said quietly, his dark eyes intense. Someone who operates outside the law when necessary to maintain order and safety. Someone most people fear and some people respect. His hand came up to cut my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. And as of last night, you became one of my people. Avery, which means I will burn down this entire city before I let anyone hurt you again. The promise should have terrified me. Instead, it sent heat flooding through my body. Desire mixed with fear, mixed with something I couldn't name. That's not an answer, I whispered. Luca's smile was slow, dangerous, devastating. Yes, he said softly, it is. After breakfast. Luca left for what he called business meetings, but not before ensuring I had everything I needed. Anna appeared with shopping bags, clothes, toiletries, even a new laptop. You'll need these, she said with a knowing smile. As if women regularly appeared in Luca's life needing complete wardrobes. I spent the day alone in the apartment, watching the city move below while my mind raced in circles. Every instinct told me to run. To thank Luca for his help and disappear before I got any deeper into whatever world he inhabited. But where would I run to? Marcus was out there, filing false police reports, spinning narratives that made me the villain in my own escape. And Luca, dangerous, mysterious Luca, had made that problem disappear with a single phone call. I found myself drawn to his bookshelf, running my fingers along the spines. First edition Fitzgerald, Hemingway, Dante's Inferno in the original Italian. This wasn't a collection for show. These books had been read, loved, lived with. I pulled out The Great Gatsby, settling onto the window seat as afternoon light spilled across the pages. That's my favorite. Luca's voice came from behind me hours later. I hadn't heard him enter. I jumped, nearly dropping the book. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. I'm glad you did. He crossed to the window, loosening his tie with one hand. He looked tired, tension evident in his shoulders, but his expression softened when he looked at me. What do you think of it? I think, I said carefully, marking my place, that Gatsby spent his whole life chasing something he could never really have, building an empire on lies to win back a dream that was already dead. Luca's dark eyes held mine. Maybe. Or maybe he understood that some things are worth any price, even impossible ones. The weight in his words made my breath catch. He poured 2 glasses of wine from a bottle that probably cost more than my monthly rent at Marcus's place, and settled onto the window seat beside me, close enough that I could feel his warmth, but not touching. Tell me about your mother, he said quietly. So I did. About her battle with cancer my freshman year of high school. About reading to her in the hospital, how she made me promise to go to college, to never let anyone make me small. About how lost I'd been after she died, how Marcus had seemed like a lifeline when he was really a trap. Luca listened with complete attention, asking questions that showed he truly heard me. Then unexpectedly he shared pieces of himself. His mother, who'd immigrated from Italy and built a life through sheer determination. His father's import business that Luca had inherited at 25 when a rival family's bullet found its mark. The weight of expectations, of legacy, of being responsible for hundreds of people's livelihoods. I never wanted this life, he admitted, staring into his wine. I wanted to teach literature, to lose myself in books instead of territory disputes and protection rackets. He looked up at me. But we don't always get to choose our paths, do we? No, I agreed softly. We don't. The conversation flowed for hours about books, about loss, about the people we'd wanted to be versus who we'd become. With each shared story, each moment of vulnerability, I felt the space between us shrinking. Finally, I asked the question I'd been avoiding all day. Are you in the Mafia, Luca? He didn't flinch, didn't look away. My family controls certain interests in Chicago. Protection, construction, import operations. Some legitimate, most operating in areas the law doesn't reach. He set down his wineglass. We're not the Godfather, Avery. We don't traffic drugs or hurt innocents. We're more like a shadow government, maintaining order where the official one fails. That's a nice way of saying you're a crime boss. It's an accurate way of saying I protect my territory and my people. His voice was calm, matter of fact. Sometimes that requires breaking laws that were written to protect the powerful, not the vulnerable. Sometimes it means being the monster so others don't have to be. I should have been horrified. Should have grabbed my mother's necklace and run. Instead, I found myself asking, and me? What am I to you? Luca turned to face me fully, his dark eyes intense in the fading light. You're someone who walked into my bar terrified and alone, and something in me recognized something in you. His hand came up slowly, giving me time to pull away, and cupped my face. You're someone I can't stop thinking about. Someone who makes me want to be the man I might have been, instead of the one I had to become. Luca, his name was barely a whisper. I know it's too soon, he continued, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. I know you just escaped one man's control, and the last thing you need is another man making claims. But I need you to understand, what I feel for you isn't about possession or power. It's about recognition. Like finding something I didn't know I was missing. The confession hung between us. Raw and honest in a way I suspected Luca rarely allowed himself to be. My heart pounded against my ribs as I leaned forward, closing the distance between us. Then kiss me, I whispered, and let me decide if I want to be found. Luca's control snapped. His mouth crashed onto mine, not gentle, not tentative, but hungry and claiming, and absolutely devastating. I melted into him. 3 years of being told I wanted too much, felt too much, breaking open under the intensity of his desire. His hands tangled in my hair, cradling my face like I was something precious and breakable and worth protecting at any cost. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca pressed his forehead to mine. "This is dangerous, Avery," he warned, his voice rough. "Not just because of who I am, but because of what I want from you. What I'll do to keep you." "I know," I breathed, surprising myself with the truth of it. "And I'm choosing it anyway." The kiss changed everything and nothing. Luca pulled away first, his control visible in the rigid set of his jaw, the way his hands trembled slightly before he fisted them at his sides. "I'm sorry," he said, though his eyes told a different story. "That was inappropriate. You're vulnerable, under my protection. I shouldn't have." I silenced him by pulling him back. Kissing him harder this time, pouring 3 years of being told I was too much into showing him exactly how much I could be. When we broke apart again, both breathing heavily, Luca's carefully maintained control had fractured. "Avery," he warned, his voice rough, "if we do this, if you choose this, you need to understand what it means. Then tell me." I didn't recognize my own voice, steady and demanding. No more half-truths, no more protection through ignorance. "If I am choosing you, I choose all of you." Something shifted in his expressions, surprise perhaps, or respect. He stood, pacing to the window, hands shoved in his pockets. "The Moretti family has controlled the North Side for 3 generations. Protection rackets, construction, import operations, some gambling. We're not the biggest family in Chicago, but we're one of the most respected." He turned to face me. "I took over when my father was killed 5 years ago. I was 25. Too young, according to the other families, but I proved myself." "How?" I asked, though part of me wasn't sure I wanted the answer. "By being smarter, more strategic, less impulsive than my father." His dark eyes held mine. "And yes, by being willing to do what was necessary to protect our interests. I've hurt people, Avery. I'll hurt people again if they threaten what's mine." What's mine? The possessive phrase should have set off alarms. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in my belly. "Have you killed anyone?" The question escaped before I could stop it. Luca's face remained impassive. "Yes." The single word hung between us. No justification, no excuse, just brutal honesty. "How many? Does it matter?" He crossed back to me, kneeling so we were eye level. "I'm telling you this not to frighten you. But, so you understand, the protection I'm offering comes from a place of darkness. I can keep you safe from Marcus, from anyone who would hurt you, because I'm willing to go places most men won't, to do things most men can't." My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From the weight of the choice before me. What happens if I stay? "Really? You become part of my world," Luca said quietly. "Protected, yes. Provided for, absolutely. But also a target. Other families will see you as leverage against me. Enemies I've made will see you as weakness to exploit." His hand came up to cut my face. "I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe, but I can't promise you'll never be in danger. This life fit doesn't come with guarantees, and if I leave?" Pain flickered across his features. "Then tomorrow morning, I set you up with an apartment across town, bank account with enough money to start over. Enrollment at Northwestern for spring semester. Everything you need to build a life safely away from Marcus and me both." He swallowed hard. "And I walk away. Completely." The offer was genuine. I could see it in his eyes. He would let me go, would give me everything I needed, and disappear from my life, if that's what I chose. The realization made something crack open in my chest. "I need time," I whispered, "to think, to be sure." Luca nodded once and stood, the vulnerability in his expression carefully masked again. "Take all the time you need. Sleep on it. Decide in the morning." He moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, Avery, you're the first person in 5 years who's made me feel like something other than what my father's legacy demanded. After he left, I lay awake in that enormous bed, weighing impossible choices. Safety versus passion. Ordinary life versus extraordinary danger. The woman I'd been versus the woman I might become. Around 2 a.m. I heard voices outside the apartment, low, urgent, aggressive. I crept to the door, pressing my ear against the wood. Don't care what Moretti says. An unfamiliar voice, cold and sharp. The girl is leverage. We take her. We control him. Dante's orders? Another voice, uncertain. Dante wants the north side. Moretti's been untouchable for too long. But now he's got a weakness. A pretty little weakness who doesn't know what she's walked into. My blood ran cold. Someone else knew about me. Someone who wanted to use me against Luca. When do we move? Soon. Moretti can't watch her every second. We'll find an opening. The voices faded as the men moved away. I stood frozen, my heart hammering, understanding crashing over me like ice water. It didn't matter if I chose to stay or leave. I was already a target. Already part of Luca's world, whether I wanted to be or not. And the decision I thought I had until morning had just been made for me. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every sound in the hallway made me jump. Every shadow outside the window looked like a threat. The men's words played on repeat in my mind. The girl is leverage. We take her. We control him. At dawn, I heard Luca's key in the lock. He entered quietly, probably expecting me to be asleep, and froze when he saw me sitting on the couch, fully dressed, my mother's necklace clutched in my fist. What's wrong? He crossed to me immediately, his trained eyes scanning for visible threats. Did something happen? There were men outside last night, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, talking about me, about using me to get to you. Someone named Dante once, Alessandro Dante. Luca's expression went cold and deadly. Son of a bitch. I knew he was making moves, but I didn't think he'd be this bold. He pulled out his phone, firing off rapid texts. What exactly did you hear? I repeated the conversation as precisely as I could remember. With each word, Luca's fury became more controlled, more dangerous. This wasn't Marcus's explosive rage. This was calculated violence waiting to be unleashed. Pack a bag, he said quietly. You're moving. Today. Moving where? My actual home. A penthouse across town with security Dante's people can't penetrate. He was already making calls, his voice clipped and commanding. Tony, I need a team at the apartment in 10 minutes. Full escort protocol. Yes. Dante made a move. No, she's fine, but we're relocating immediately. Luca, wait. I stood, grabbing his arm. I haven't decided if I'm staying. You said I had until morning to choose. He turned to me, his dark eyes intense. The choice just got made for you, Avery. Dante knows about you now. Whether you stay with me or leave, you're a target. The only question is whether you want to be a protected target or a vulnerable one. The brutal truth of his words hit like a physical blow. I'd thought I had agency, control over my own fate, but I'd been naive. The moment I'd walked into Sanctuary, the moment Luca had claimed me as under his protection, I'd become part of a game I didn't understand. This is insane, I whispered. A week ago, I was just trying to survive, Marcus. Now there are mob bosses plotting to kidnap me. Luca's expression softened fractionally. He cupped my face with both hands, forcing me to meet his eyes. I know. And I'm sorry. If I'd known Dante would move this fast, I would have been more careful, would have... He stopped, jaw clenching. But we're here now, and I need you to trust me. Can you do that? I searched his face. This man who'd saved me, protected me, wanted me, despite knowing it made him vulnerable. This dangerous, complicated man who read Fitzgerald and cooked his mother's recipes and was capable of murder to protect what was his. Yes, I heard myself say. I trust you. Relief flooded his features. Good. Then listen carefully. He pulled back, switching into what I was beginning to recognize as his boss mode. For the next few days, you don't leave my sight or Tony's. No exceptions. You do exactly what we tell you, when we tell you. This isn't about control, it's about keeping you alive. Understand? I nodded, throat tight. And one more thing. He moved to a panel in the wall I hadn't noticed, pressing his palm against it. It slid open to reveal a small safe. Inside was a handgun, compact and black. "You're going to learn to use this." "Luca, I can't." "You can and you will." His tone left no room for argument. "If something happens, if someone gets past my security, you need to be able to protect yourself." "I won't let you be helpless, Avery. Not again." Within an hour, the apartment was swarming with Luca's people. Tony directed the team with military precision, while Anna packed my belongings, including clothes I hadn't even worn yet. Luca stayed at my side, his hand a constant presence at my lower back, both reassuring and possessive. The drive to his penthouse was surreal. 2 black SUVs, one in front and one behind, moving through Chicago traffic like a presidential motorcade. I sat in the back seat next to Luca, watching the city pass by, feeling like I'd stepped into someone else's life. His actual home was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Modern furniture that screamed wealth and taste, a kitchen that belonged in a magazine. But what struck me most was how lived-in it felt. Books everywhere, photos of his family. A blanket draped over the couch like someone actually used it. "This is beautiful," I said quietly, turning in a slow circle. "It's home," Luca replied, watching me carefully. "Or it will be if you stay." Before I could respond, Tony appeared in the doorway. "Boss, we've got a situation. Dante's people just hit one of our construction sites. 3 of our guys in the hospital." Luca's expression went arctic. "Casualties? Non-fatal. But it's a message. Then we send one back." Luca turned to me, conflict clear in his eyes. "I have to handle this. Tony will stay with you. Don't leave this apartment for any reason. There's food, books, anything you need. I'll be back as soon as I can." "What are you going to do?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. He crossed to me, pressing a hard, possessive kiss to my lips. "What I have to," he said against my mouth. "To end this before it gets worse." Then he was gone, and I was alone with Tonya, mountain of a man who looked like he could break someone in half, but spoke to me with surprising gentleness. "He cares about you," Tony said after a moment, settling into a chair near the door. "I've known Luca for 15 years. Never seen him like this over anyone." "Like what?" Tony smiled slightly, vulnerable. "He's willing to go to war with Dante to keep you safe." "Okay, that's not a small thing in our world, Miss Avery. That's everything." I moved to the windows, staring out at the lake, processing the impossible reality of my situation. A week ago, I'd been trapped in Marcus's apartment, believing I had no options, no future, no hope. Now I was in a mafia boss's penthouse, learning to shoot guns, protected by armed guards, and caught in the middle of a territory war. The question was, had I escaped one cage only to enter another? Or had I finally found the one place where I could be truly free? Luca was gone for 3 days. 3 days of Tony teaching me to shoot in the penthouse's private basement range. 3 days of learning to check corners, to trust my instincts, to move like prey that had learned to bite back. 3 days of falling asleep alone in Luca's massive bed, surrounded by his scent, wondering if he'd come back whole. He called twice a day, brief, careful conversations where he didn't tell me what he was doing, and I didn't ask. But I could hear the exhaustion in his voice, the weight of whatever war he was waging on my behalf. On the 4th morning, Tony's phone rang. He listened for a moment, his expression darkening, then turned to me. "I have to step out. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except Luca or me. Understand?" "What's wrong?" Alarm spiked through me. "Just a situation that needs handling. I'll be back in 20 minutes. You'll be fine. There are 4 guards in the lobby and 2 on this floor." He was already moving toward the door. "Remember what I taught you?" I nodded, my mouth dry. "Good girl. 20 minutes. The door closed behind him. I locked it, then stood in the sudden silence of the penthouse, my heart hammering. Something felt wrong. Tony wouldn't leave unless it was urgent. Unless someone had created a distraction specifically to pull him away. I moved to Luca's office, to the safe where he'd shown me the gun. My hand shook as I entered the code he'd made me memorize. The weapon felt heavier than during practice, more real. I checked the magazine like Tony had taught me, made sure the safety was on, and tried to steady my breathing. Probably nothing. Probably just paranoia after days of living in fear. Then I heard it, the faint sound of the penthouse door lock disengaging. Not forced. Someone had the code. I pressed myself against the wall beside the office door, gun raised. Exactly as Tony had drilled into me. Footsteps. Multiple people. Quiet, professional. Clear, a male voice called softly. She's here somewhere. Dante wants her alive and unmarked. Moretti's already lost 3 of his sights. When he loses his girl too, he'll break. My blood turned to ice. This was it. The attack I'd been half expecting, half dreading. Check the bedroom, another voice ordered. I had seconds. Maybe less. The office had one exit directly into their path. I was trapped. But I wasn't Marcus's victim anymore. I wasn't the terrified girl who'd run through Chicago in the rain. I was someone who'd learned to fight back. I steadied the gun, flicked off the safety with my thumb, and waited. The door swung open. A man stepped through, tall, muscular, wearing all black. His eyes widened when he saw me, saw the weapon aimed at his chest. "Don't move," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "or I will shoot you." He smiled, actually smiled. "Come on, sweetheart." "You're not going to." I fired into the wall beside his head. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The man's smile vanished. Behind him I heard shouts. Movement. Chaos. "The next one goes in your leg," I said, re-aiming. "Then your arm. Then somewhere that'll hurt a lot worse. Back away from the door. Now." He raised his hands slowly, stepping back. Okay. Just stay calm." I am calm. Terrified,
And
but
I was
calm. "You're the one who broke into the wrong house." Suddenly, the penthouse erupted with sound, the front door slamming open. Multiple pairs of feet, Tony's voice roaring commands. The man in front of me turned to run, but Tony appeared behind him like an avenging angel, gun drawn. On the ground. Now. Within seconds, it was over. 4 men face down on Luca's expensive hardwood, Tony's team securing them with efficient brutality. Tony himself stormed into the office, his face a mask of fury and relief when he saw me still standing, still holding the gun. "You okay, Miss Avery?" I nodded, then shook my head, then started laughing, a slightly hysterical sound. I shot the wall. I heard. Tony gently took the gun from my shaking hands and engaged the safety. Nice placement. Scared the shit out of him without actually hitting anyone. "Luca will be proud." "How did you know?" My voice was starting to shake now that the adrenaline was fading. "How did you get back so fast?" "Because the situation I was called away for was fake." As soon as I realized it, I came running, his expression darkened. "Someone on our payroll fed them the security codes. We've got a rat, and Luca's going to be pissed." "Tony?" One of his men called from the living room. "You're going to want to see this." We moved out to find the 4 intruders secured, and one of them, the one I'd aimed at, glaring at me with pure hatred. "You're dead," he spat. "When Dante finds out you shot at me, when Moretti can't protect you anymore," Tony pistol-whipped him casually, cutting off the threat. "Shut up." Miss Avery showed considerable restraint, not putting one between your eyes. He turned to me. "Go pack a bag. Different safe house until Luca resolves this." "No." The word surprised even me. Tony raised an eyebrow. "Miss Avery, no more running. No more hiding." I lifted my chin, channeling every ounce of my mother's strength, every lesson Luca had tried to teach me. I'm not the weakness Dante thinks I am, and it's time everyone understood that. Tony stared at me for a long moment, then smiled. A real, genuine smile. "Luca's definitely going to be proud." The door burst open one more time, and Lucas stormed in, his suit disheveled, his face a mask of controlled panic. His eyes scanned the room, the secured men, Tony's team, the bullet hole in the wall, before landing on me. Avery. My name was a prayer and a curse. I crossed to him, and he pulled me into his arms so tightly I could barely breathe. "I'm okay," I whispered against his chest. "I'm okay, Luca." "They got past my security," he said, his voice rough with fury and fear. They got into my home, to you, and I handled it. I pulled back enough to look at him. I'm not a liability, Luca. I'm not your weakness. Something shifted in his dark eyes, pride, possession, and something deeper that made my breath catch. No, he agreed softly. You're my strength. He pressed a hard kiss to my forehead, then turned to Tony, his expression going cold. Find the rat. And bring me Alessandro Dante. It's time we ended this. Luca called a meeting that same night. Not at sanctuary neutral ground had been violated when Dante sent men into his home. This meeting would be on Moretti territory, in the basement of one of his legitimate businesses where the soundproofing was excellent and the exits were controlled. And for the first time, he didn't ask me to stay behind. You should see this, he said, helping me into a bulletproof vest that felt heavier than it looked. You should understand what happens when someone threatens what's mine. Tony drove us in an armored SUV. 2 more vehicles in convoy. The warehouse district was dark, industrial, the kind of place where screams wouldn't carry. Luca's hand never left mine during the drive, his thumb tracing circles on my palm, nervous habit I was beginning to recognize. You don't have to watch, he said quietly as we pulled up. You can wait in the office upstairs. No, I squeezed his hand. I need to understand your world, Luca. All of it. Even the ugly parts. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. It's going to be ugly, Avery. I know. The basement was exactly what I expected. Concrete floors, exposed pipes, a single chair in the center under harsh fluorescent lighting. And in that chair, bloodied but conscious, sat Alessandro Dante. He looked up when we entered, his lips split, one eye swelling shut, but his smile was defiant. Moretti, come to finish the job yourself? Not yet. Lucas's voice was cold, controlled. He positioned me slightly behind him, protective but not hiding me. First, you're going to answer some questions. I'm not telling you shit. Luca nodded to Tony, who stepped forward with a tablet. We found your rat, Marco Benedetti. Been on your payroll for 6 months. He gave up everything, Alessandro. Your accounts, your operations, your plans to take the north side. He handed the tablet to Luca, including proof that you've been skimming from the other families for over 2 years. Dante's face went pale. That's bullshit. It's documented. Lucas's smile was sharp as a knife. Bank transfers, shell companies, all of it. You've stolen over 3 million from the Castellano family alone, another 2 from the Russians. And the commission were. They're going to be very interested to learn how you've been cooking the books. I watched Dante's defiance crumble into something like fear. You can't prove I already did. Luca tossed the tablet onto Dante's lap. Copies have been sent to every family head in Chicago. By tomorrow morning, you'll have enemies you didn't know existed. The room went silent except for Dante's ragged breathing. This wasn't about violence. Luca had won with information. With strategy, with the kind of calculated move that destroyed empires without firing a shot. I'm giving you one chance, Luca continued, his voice deceptively soft. You leave Chicago. Tonight, take whatever you can carry and disappear. Or I turn you over to the families you've been stealing from, and let them decide your fate. That's not a choice, Dante spat. It's more than you gave the people you hurt. Luca's expression hardened. More than you were planning to give Avery. Dante's eyes flicked to me for the first time, really seeing me. The girl. This is all about the girl. No. I stepped forward, ignoring Luca's warning hand on my arm. This is about you making a mistake, thinking I was leverage instead of a person, thinking Luca would break instead of getting smarter. I leaned down, meeting Dante's eyes. You lost because you underestimated both of us. Something like grudging respect crossed Dante's battered face. He looked back at Luca. She's stronger than I thought. I know, Luca said simply. That's why I'm keeping her. 20 minutes later, Alessandro Dante was on a plane to somewhere he'd never be found. At least, not alive if the families Luca had tipped off got to him first. The threat was over. The war had ended not with bloodshed, but with information wielded like a weapon. In the SUV on the way back, I finally let myself breathe. Is it really over? It's over, Luca confirmed, pulling me against his side. Dante's finished. The other families know I handled it cleanly, without unnecessary violence. My position is stronger than ever. Because of me? The thought made my stomach twist. Because I was threatened. Because you proved you're not a weakness to exploit. He tilted my chin up, his dark eyes intense. You stood your ground, Avery. You fought back. You made them afraid of you instead of seeing you as a target. His thumb brushed my lip. You became exactly what I always knew you were. A queen, not a pawn. The words sent warmth flooding through me. What happens now? Now? Luca smiled, and it was the first genuine, unguarded smile I'd seen in days. Now we go home. To our home. And we start actually living instead of just surviving. Our home. The words settled over me like a promise. When we arrived back at the penthouse, Luca pulled me into his arms in the elevator, kissing me with a desperation that spoke of fear finally released. Almost lost you, he murmured against my lips. When Tony called, when I realized Dante's men were in my home, with you, but you didn't lose me, I kissed him back, pouring everything I felt into it. I'm right here, Luca. I'm not going anywhere, promise me. His hands framed my face, his expression vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. Promise me you're choosing this. Choosing me. Not because you're trapped or afraid or have no other option, but because you want to. I thought about the woman I'd been a week ago, broken, controlled, convinced I deserved nothing better than Marcus's cruelty. And I thought about the woman I was becoming, strong, protected, learning to fight back. I promise, I whispered. I choose you, Luca Moretti. I choose this life, this world, all of it. The relief in his eyes was devastating. Then there's something I need to give you. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and my heart stopped. My breath caught as Luca opened the velvet box. Inside wasn't a ring, it was a key. Simple, brass, attached to a leather fob engraved with coordinates. It's a villa, Luca explained quietly, watching my reaction. In Lake Como, my mother's family home, kept in a trust completely separate from my business. He took the key out, placing it in my palm. It's in your name now. Yours alone. I stared at the key, not understanding. Why would you? Because I never want you to feel trapped. His dark eyes held mine with devastating intensity. I know what it's like to have choices taken away, Avery. My father's death. This life. The responsibilities I inherited. None of it was my choice. But you? He closed my fingers around the key. You get to choose. Every single day. I don't understand. Tears blurred my vision. The villa is your escape route, he said simply. If this life becomes too much. If I become too much. If you wake up one day and realize you made a mistake, you take that key and you go. No questions, no consequences. Just freedom. The enormity of what he was offering hit me like a wave. This wasn't possession. This was the opposite. A man powerful enough to keep me, choosing instead to give me the means to leave. You're giving me permission to walk away? I whispered. I'm giving you a choice, he corrected gently. Always. Because the only way I want you to stay is if you choose it freely. Not because you're afraid, not because you have nowhere else to go, but because you want to be here. With me. I looked down at the key in my hand. This small piece of metal that represented everything Marcus had never given me. Agency, trust, respect. Then I looked back at Luca, this dangerous, complicated man who'd saved me and protected me and somehow understood exactly what I needed. I love you, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. I know it's too soon. I know it's crazy, but I love you, Luca. His breath caught. For a moment, vulnerability transformed his face into something young and unguarded. Say it again. I love you. Stronger this time. The bar owner and the mafia boss. The man who cooks his mother's recipes and the one who ended a war with information instead of bullets. All of you. Luca kissed me then, deep and claiming and absolutely devastating. He lifted me into his arms, carrying me to the bedroom like I weighed nothing, laying me on his bed with a reverence that made my chest ache. "I love you too," he murmured against my lips. "From the moment you walked into my bar, terrified and brave and so damn beautiful it hurt to look at you. I knew you'd either destroy me or save me." He smiled, tracing my face with gentle fingers. "Turns out, you did both. That night, Lucas showed me what it meant to be cherished. Not owned, not controlled, but valued for exactly who I was. Every touch was a promise. Every kiss was a claim I was finally willing to accept. 3 months later, I stood behind the bar at Sanctuary, mixing drinks I'd learned to make, laughing with Anna about a customer's terrible pickup line. The bar had become my second home. Luca had made me manager, giving me purpose and independence beyond just being the boss's girl. Northwestern classes started next week. I'd enrolled in English literature, finally pursuing the dream Marcus had tried to delete. Luca had framed my acceptance letter and hung it in his office. The door opened and my heart did its familiar skip when Luca walked in. 3 months, and he still affected me the same way, that mixture of desire and safety I'd never thought I could feel simultaneously. He crossed to the bar, leaning over to kiss me despite the whistles from his men. "Ready to go home, Kara?" Home. Not his penthouse. Not my apartment. Ours. Almost. I finished serving the customer, then untied my apron. "Did the thing with the lawyer go okay?" "Perfect." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "It's official. You're now part owner of Sanctuary. 50-50 split." I stared at the documents, shock rendering me speechless. "Luca, I can't. This is worth everything," he agreed. "Which is why I want to share it with you. You're not just staying in my world, Avery. You're building it with me." As we walked out into the Chicago night, his hand warm in mine, I thought about the woman I'd been 3 months ago. Running through the rain, desperate and broken, believing I had no future worth fighting for. Now I had everything. A business I helped run, an education I'd fought for, a man who loved me without trying to own me. I had purpose. I had strength. I had choice. The key to Lake Como sat in my jewelry box at home, a constant reminder that I could leave any time. But the beautiful truth was, I never wanted to. I'd escaped my abusive ex and stumbled into a bar owned by a mafia boss. I'd found danger and protection, fear and love, all tangled together in ways I couldn't separate anymore. But most importantly, I'd found myself. And in Luca's arms, in his world, in the life we were building together, I'd finally found sanctuary. Not in a place, not in safety from the outside world, but in knowing I was strong enough to handle whatever came next, together.